Welcome to The Bill Walton Show, featuring conversations with leaders, entrepreneurs, artists, and thinkers. Fresh perspectives on money, culture, politics, and human flourishing. Interesting people, interesting things.
If you're like me, you're wondering what we can do to find anything good in what's going on in the world with the red-blue political divide. Politics has become unbelievably toxic. The country seems to be ripped apart. I used to call this show On Common Ground, and then I spent a little time with that idea, and then I couldn't find any common ground, so I just went back and named it The Bill Walton Show. It was easier. And then along comes Jim Pinkerton with a book soon to be published, The Secret of Directional Investing, Making Money Amidst the Red-Blue Divide. Jim worked for Ronald Reagan and George Bush the Elder and had a long, illustrious career, including a long stint as a Fox News contributor. And smart guy. I've known him for a while and always outside the box thinking, big picture thinking. He's got a lot of really interesting ideas, but I want to get practical today to see how we can make some money out of the evident political catastrophe we're in the midst of. Jim, great to see you.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Thanks for having me.
So, making money amidst the red-blue rumble.
Well, let's take an example. If you'd known that Disney was going to go woke and crash its markets and wreck the Star Wars franchise, you would have shorted Disney, and then you would have enjoyed watching Disney go down 40%, making money. There is just the secret of directional investing is about, the basic investment wisdom. The trend is your friend. So if you identify the trend, it's better to be in the tech business than the buggy whip business, as a trend, for example. You can make money. And one of the big trends of our time, as the title of the book suggests, is the red-blue split. So if you look at companies that have attempted to be national and yet they've gone woke, they have hurt themselves badly with the national market. We're talking Disney, we're talking AB, Bud Light, Planet Fitness, and then probably most spectacularly of all, BlackRock. BlackRock, is the biggest investment company in the world. And, they've gone woke, and I would say they've sort of become blue rock, and it's hurt them. And so then the question becomes, speculatively, is there room for a red rock? And when you see people, Ken Griffin leaving Chicago to go to Florida, Carl Icahn, Evergreen Investment going to Texas, you start to realize, yes, there could be, as Governor Abbott of Texas says, a Wall Street West, or as Governor DeSantis would say, a Wall Street South. And that's full of implications, not only for those companies, but also for real estate. I mean, the value of real estate in Palm Beach has tripled in the last 5 years.
Well, Palm Beach, or not Palm Beach, but Miami is well on the way to becoming the alternate financial capital of the Western Hemisphere, really. I mean, it's long been a home to all the flight capital from Central and South America. And now it's home to flight capital from the rest of the United States.
Exactly. And you look at Brazil.
Being in Illinois is almost as bad as being in Bolivia.
Listen, I'm from Illinois.
I know. You grew up in Evanston, right? Yeah.
Let's see, there's the Pritzker family has just chosen to try and make Illinois the sort of transgender surgery capital.
So what's with that? When I was a baby banker in the 70s, I was like 26 years old, and Jay Pritzker became a customer of the bank, and they assigned me to him. And it was interesting to learn from him. He was a fabulous guy, very smart, very, very down to earth. And then all of a sudden, he made these billions of dollars and produced these offspring and cousins of his, brothers of his that had children, and then one generation leads to the next. Pritzkers are a catastrophe. So do you have a theory of what happened to
I other than some sort of multi-generational saga right out of the Magnificent Ambersons or something.
So when you write your novel, we'll do the Pritzker novel.
The decline and fall of a dynasty or something. But what's interesting is the Illinois has chosen a certain path.
Yeah.
And it's been pretty bad. They've chosen to sort of legalize crime and raise taxes and then seem to think that their idea of economic development is transgender surgery. And, other states have chosen other paths.
So I hadn't focused. What in terms of transgender capital of the world? What are they doing? What are they doing there?
Medicaid covers it.
Okay.
In Illinois, and the Pritzker, Jennifer, the former, I think James Pritzker, now Jennifer Pritzker, is a leading figure in this transgender thing. There's a woman named Jennifer Bilek. You ought to get her on the show sometime. She's quite interesting on this topic. And they have a serious argument that there's just the future of humanity involves changing your gender and so on and so on. And, it's kind of out of science fiction kind of stuff. And, the future is unknowable. Who can say for sure that they're wrong, right?
Let me test your investment hypothesis, though. If you believe in transgender, and I do not, but let's say I just wanted to be cynical about my money. What's the financial play on transgender?
It becomes the medical hub. It becomes
Okay.
the transgenderism what, Cleveland Clinic or Hopkins are to cancer.
Okay.
What's the big economic driver in Baltimore these days? Johns Hopkins, right? And so it's, states, that's a big part of what's going on. This is a big trend is, again, as red and blue divide, as they achieve a separate and distinct consciousness. In the book I point out, in their respective 2023 inaugural addresses, Gavin Newsom used the word freedom 23 times. And Ron DeSantis used the word freedom 24 times. They just have completely different visions.
Except Ron DeSantis meant it.
Well, okay, fair enough. But
freedom to do different things.
But both Newsom and DeSantis won re-election by 20
Let's drill
points.
into that. What did Newsom mean by freedom?
Abortion.
Okay.
And that kind of, and just the general joy of living in a state with
abortion, free to change your sex,
free to change your sex, and no influence of the Christian church or anything like that. On things.
Interesting.
And then also they would say, and this is a trend too. In 2014, California was the 7th largest economy in the world. And for 10 years now, we've been reading it's, homelessness in San Francisco and crime in Los Angeles. And that's all true. However, the tech bubble, the tech wave is so strong that California's gone from 7th to 4th or 5th in the world economy. NVIDIA, covers for a lot of sins. And so another trend clearly is that tech is gaining in ascendancy, And, the hubs of tech are, California, Washington State, Massachusetts, and so on. And that's something we have to, keep in mind as conservatives. I have a chapter in the book called The United States of Arbitrage. I say, look, just envision a world where you go to California, they got lots of money, and they give you a green energy subsidy, you can have an abortion. And then you go to Texas for a gun and a tax cut. It becomes a way of thinking about, arbitrage is a venerable investment concept and a lifestyle concept too, for that matter. And I think those are the sorts of choices that Americans, investors, and just citizens are going to have going forward. Do I want to live in Massachusetts, or do I want to live in Florida? And there's plenty of people who would say, I would never live in Florida.
Let's do a tutorial. Explain federalism. And let's talk about how that's working here.
Federalism is a concept that most associated with James Madison, the principal author of the Constitution, who was at great pains to say that the states are prior to the federal government. And actually, James Madison wrote the Virginia Resolution in 1799, where he said the states should be able to interpose themselves to the federal government. And then Thomas Jefferson, who was at that time the sitting vice president of the United States, wrote the Kentucky Resolution, which pretty much said the same thing. He actually used the word nullification. So federalism is deeply embedded in the constitutional history of this country, which says the states are the proper delineation of political power in the United States.
So I know you're a lot more than just an investment thinker. You're actually, it seems to me, you are advocating a return to aggressive federalism. Where the states become
rights. I call it states' rights.
Okay.
I use exactly the phrase that Jefferson and Madison used, and for that matter, Alexander Hamilton used it as well. And again, it's been sort of buried under history, but I put a lot of stock in the 1932 opinion of Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis, who said the states should be the laboratories of democracy. He said, I use the quote at great length, the Ice House decision of 1932 is, let our minds be bold. And if that's not a talk for an investor, what is?
Not just an incubator of democracy, but an incubator of entrepreneurship and innovation. And different states would have different specialties.
Exactly. I mean, at one time or another.
Like Nashville used to be just music. Now it's a lot of other things.
I mean, look at Delaware Incorporation.
Yeah.
And look at, and the book begins with the story of Nevada. Nevada in 1931, probably Las Vegas, had a population of 5,000. And an acre of land on was what was then called the Los Angeles Highway sold for $75. Today, the metro area of Las Vegas is 2.2 million, and an acre of land on the Strip is 30 million. So what happened? They legalized gambling, and they made it work. They legalized gambling, and then were able to keep their franchise of legalized gambling while staying within the United States and being protected from the Russians, the Nazis, the communists, the whoever's, or for that matter, New Mexico. And that was sort of the political art of this, is to say, it's easy to say you want to be an enterprise zone. You can be Hong Kong and be an enterprise zone. And then the Chinese come and swallow you, the Chinese communists, and you're done for. So you need, again, there's a lot of the political science here about how you can envision an enterprise zone for yourself and yet not be conquered by some military power nearby.
Well, Michael Porter wrote a book 25 years ago, 30 years ago on strategy. He wrote several of them. And one of the books I thought was interesting was this idea of just what you're saying, local communities or places become hubs for a certain kind of creative talent. Hollywood became a hub for artistic filmmaking talent. Silicon Valley, tech, obviously, Wall Street, finance, right. Nashville music, and we can extend that. But he also took it all the way back to the 14th century, where in Italy, northern Italy, the metalworkers formed gosh, I wish I could. He had a great term for it. Maybe you. A
cluster was the phrase he used.
It was a cluster?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, so this is similar to that. Where
it is. It's an observation about economic development, and a lot of it is based on MIT and Stanford are just greater wealth producers. You know, Robert Solow, who was no conservative, but he won a Nobel Prize for economics, said you have to realize that capital is twice as valuable as labor in the economy, and innovation is twice as valuable as capital.
Mm-hmm.
So again, a clear trend is, you know, if two graduate students can walk out of MIT and say, we have a way of using gamma waves, which is a fancy way of saying light, to cure Alzheimer's, they can get $73 million from a venture capitalist to try it out, mostly spending it on the FDA.
Did that happen?
It's happening right now. It's a company called Optogenetics.
Is it public?
No,
can we buy the stock?
But I'm sure they want to talk to you.
Well, I want to have a few money-making ideas.
You can get.
Well,
I've
been
somewhere
in the venture business, so
but
we can.
You know, and then you may have recently read. It's not in the book, but about the AI company Suno, S-U-N-O.
Yeah.
A guy walks out of Harvard and says, I can use AI to make music. It's not just video, it's not just text, it's music. So imagine a Spotify for music. You pay him $10 a month for your account, and it composes any song you want. That's the kind of value of it. Again, that's a trend to watch, which is this, you know, again, the red states, and I speak as a Republican, we have to be mindful. I mean, here we are in Maryland. You know, here we have to be mindful that tech is so strong and so powerful that, I make a point in the book that if a red state were really on its game, thinking for itself, it would announce to the world that any student who got an 800 on his or her math SAT would get a free ride. You'd have
terrific idea.
Have a tech cluster 10 years later.
Just
do it in
track
Fayetteville,
down.
Arkansas, and you'll have all the tech people you want 5 years from now.
Well, you're saying, you know, I've been involved in private equity, venture capital, all sorts of aspects of making money in the capital markets and building real businesses. But now I find myself here in Washington area, and it seems like everything's supposed to have a government solution. And almost nothing as a government solution. And what you're saying is through innovation, unleashing some talent, put people on a problem, you're likely to get a solution, not more layers of regulation.
Exactly. And look, I've been in this Washington since 1980. Okay, and I knew Newt Gingrich really well.
Boy, that's a long time.
It is a long time, but
you went to Stanford, as I recollect.
Sorry,
you went to Stanford.
I did. Yeah, and I've always sort of liked big ideas, and I always loved the idea of going to the moon and so on. And I noticed that lots of big projects, lots of big science projects, like the SST and the breeder reactor and the super colliding superconductor, were getting killed. They were getting NIMBY'd and killed, and I thought, well, that's
NIMBY, not in my backyard.
NIMBY, not in my backyard. Yes,
right.
Sir. And high-speed rail in California couldn't get anywhere. Just down the road here at Union Station, Secretary Buttigieg said, "We have a wonderful plan for revising Union Station, and it'll be completed in 2040." Union Station was built in 1907. It's a perfectly nice building. All you have to do is spiff it up a little bit. It shouldn't take 20 years.
And Union Station was built, took about 18 months. The
Pentagon was built in 13 months and so on. It's just nuts
and
what's going on.
Empire State Building in about a year and a half.
Exactly. So I began to think, though, at the same time that the government is clogged up, high-speed rail and Union Station and so on and so on, occasionally it punches through. For example, Governor Shapiro, Democrat of Pennsylvania, when the bridge fell down on I-95 in Philadelphia, he said, "We're not going to paralyze the East Coast for the next 2 years while we fill out environmental impact statements. We're just going to fix it." And they did it in a month. Nobody could believe it, but he did it. So I then further thought, some people are doing things. Elon Musk, in the middle of all this NIMBYism and all this stuff, he's building Tesla and Starlink and SpaceX and Neuralink and so on. And that began to realize there is a trend there in certain sectors, visionary, Ayn Rand type capitalist tycoons are doing fabulous big things. And so
I already think you ought to change the name of your book. Is it too late? Can you call your publisher?
I can do it.
Well, the thing about directional investing is, I think, is something fairly passive. You call up your broker, you invest in this, that, or the other thing. You're really talking about something much more dynamic. You're talking about secrets of building industries and entrepreneurship and how to get rich. I mean,
well, and yes, I am.
As a community, also as individuals.
And to say, for example,
who's your publisher? I'll give him a call.
Post Hill in Tennessee.
All right, I'll talk.
And
Okay, but anyway, what you're talking about is I wasn't quite sure how to take this based on the title, but what we're talking about is something very fundamental that we ought to make as a matter of public policy everywhere.
Well, actually, the last chapter is on the politics of this. How to change the politics. And I begin with the amazing success of Grover Norquist and the
Tax
American
Foundation
for Tax Reform.
Tax Reform.
He's boiled down the no tax message so that politicians can understand it to 55 words. Okay, and he's changed the world. I mean, everybody would agree that the tax pledge has just changed the dynamic.
The tax pledge is 55 words.
There's actually various versions of it, but the federal tax pledge is 55 words.
Yeah, he's been on the show.
And it's just so crisp and clean. And I worked for George H.W. Bush, who broke the pledge and was defeated for re-election in 1992. So that was a good lesson. And since then, Grover has tells that no Republican in federal office has voted for a tax increase since. Lots of governors have, but no federal office has. And it's so therefore, the notion of a pledge.
So let's talk about that. Let's work on it. How would we write that pledge?
The challenge would be, I'll give you a great example. Elon Musk, who was, the greatest tycoon of our era.
Yeah, he's amazing.
And has made going to the moon and the Mars plausible now in a way that it didn't seem, 10 or 15 years ago, has been in a low-grade conflict with, of all things, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Because they would love nothing better than to say that his rocket launches are bothering the frogs and the snails and the whatevers. And he's tweeted about this a lot.
I'm sure it wakes him up, at least.
Sorry?
I'm sure it wakes them up at least.
He's tweeted about it. He said,
Sure.
I'm trying to be an interplanetary species for humanity.
Yeah.
And these bureaucrats are shuffling papers and trying to slow me down.
Right.
So it would be a pledge would be if you want to get anywhere in Texas politics, where SpaceX is headquartered, you have to sign a pledge that you would say that the Fish and Wildlife Service is not allowed to interfere with Elon Musk's rocket launches. So your choice. You want to? Grover Norquist is the nicest, mildest personality ever.
And he also
simply says,
up, yeah.
if you sign this pledge, I'm for you, and if you don't sign it, all these people will be against you. You decide, Mr. and Ms. Politician. I would make the same pledge on creating a protective framework around Elon Musk and rockets, starting with the Fish and Wildlife Service and extending to whatever else it is. And I say, this is our vision of how Texas will be the space launch capital of the world. And we know that Florida might want to compete with that. And so that's fine. We'll take the competition, but we will try and be as friendly to space launching in Texas as Nevada is friendly to casinos.
So for a person who's thinking about what the heck to do next, you've got two notions. You've got the trend is your friend. You mentioned you can spot a trend and then you can shape a trend.
Right.
But as an individual, you can decide which state you want to be on based on what you believe and what you think you can do. And I guess if you want to do trans, you go to Illinois.
Right.
But if you don't,
Right.
you go someplace else. So this has got this is both job and physical mobility. People have got to be willing to pick up and go where the opportunities are.
Right. One of the books that I quote extensively is a book written back in 2008 by a fellow named Bill Bishop. It's called The Big Sort. And he's making the point.
The big what?
Sort, S-O-R-T.
Sort? Okay, big sort.
He's making the point that Americans are moving increasingly based on ideology, and they just simply don't feel comfortable in state X or Y. And it goes both ways. It's, if you're gay, you want to get out of Alabama, and if you're, you're pro-family, you want to be in Alabama, that kind of thing. And it's just it's a very interesting, well-done book. And so, yes, but then once you're in a state, you could then say, what if we use digital technologies? I worked at Fox News for 20 years. I tried to always get this across. You want to do more than just be passive and watch. You want to do something. You want to, and online and digital, unfortunately, the tech companies are pretty much controlled by liberals and not interested in this, but there should be a tech platform. I talk about this in the book, a tech platform that says, I want to take a pledge on these issues, and if I take the pledge, I will promise to vote accordingly, and I'll do it publicly. And now peer pressure and honor say, I have to keep my pledge, not just to vote for president, but also to vote in primary elections and for dog catcher and state legislature and everything else. This becomes sort of a political machine.
So let me just play this out. So you're a liberal from California, and you want to move to Tennessee because there are no taxes. You got to take a pledge not to bring all the California ideas to Tennessee.
You could do that. You could do that.
Each state government, all right, if you're going to move into the state, here's the pledge.
You could, and you could say, again, if you take the pledge, this is what digital allows for.
Yeah.
It's all this kind of grows out of customer relationship management kind of stuff. Is
CRM,
Facebook and Yelp.
The technology is clearly there already.
Exactly. So it knows what we're doing, what we're saying right now. And if I tell my iPhone, look, I will pledge to vote for the no tax increase, pro-space, pro-health innovation candidate. And now, if the politician could say, if 8% of the voters will vote for me on this and 7% will vote for me on that, you can now assemble a coalition, and a coalition that would get you to 51. The problem with the parties, as they are now, the Democrats and Republicans, is if you vote Republican, you can't say for sure what you're going to get. Are you going to get MAGA and just general Matt Gaetz buffoonery, or are you going to get genuine I care about taxes and regulation and stuff? You don't know. And what you want to do is clarify that. Say, listen, it's nice that you're a Republican. It's nice that you're a Democrat. What I really care about is space or transgenderism or tax cuts or tax increases, whatever it is. And I'm saying, and I will put my name, and it's not a legal contract. I mean, it's in a sense that you can't legally promise your vote to something.
No, you couldn't. It's not enforceable, but
it's an honor thing.
Yeah.
Most people will not betray their friends. And so if I go public saying I'm for this, and then the political operative says, or the digital relationship thing says, hey, Mr. Pinkerton, you haven't voted yet. The polls close at 7 p.m. and you haven't voted yet. Get your fanny in there. I think that would be the kind of political machine that would then say, listen, if you move your company from New York City to Tennessee or Wyoming or wherever, we will protect you in the following ways. And there's an army of voters. You can not only, don't have to take my word for it, they're publicly listed. There's a gallery of voter heroes there, people who have a win streak of voting in every election and every primary and everything like that. You can meet them. They'll tell you that they will always vote to defend you on this. And then you've got a governor and an attorney general who will say, look, we'll fight the federal government on this. So make sure that we keep banking secrecy in Wyoming.
So you and I both, my main house is in Virginia. Let's do this in Virginia. Let's Youngkin maybe Youngkin, you could use a big
look,
idea.
Youngkin, I think of Youngkin all the time.
Yeah,
I think he's a good guy and everything. I voted for him.
I know him.
But he is not going to make it as MAGA.
No.
He's going to make it as
as an innovator, as somebody that's created a lot of wealth, and that's been lost in this discussion about MAGA.
Exactly.
Discussion about the left-right divide is nothing about what you and I are talking about.
I agree. And let's take an example of somebody who's probably somewhere between a liberal and a libertarian. Somewhere.
Yeah.
Sam Altman.
Right.
Of OpenAI. Okay. Yeah. I wrote about this for Breitbart the other day. He said, this AI thing is so good, I want 7 trillion for chips. Not billion, trillion. Now, think about AI and the potential over the next 100 years. Can anybody say that 7 trillion for chips for AI is too little?
No.
Right, exactly. So he's thinking 7 trillion. Okay. Arkansas, Virginia, Pennsylvania, wherever, Florida, New Hampshire want that money, right? They want that chip business. It all shouldn't be in Arizona. It should be wherever you want it to be. But people should be going to Sam Altman and saying, put it here in my state, and here's the deal I'm going to offer you. And nobody would be better at that than Youngkin.
So is Sam Altman looking for a place to hatch this from? Is he still in play?
As far as I know, the last I read, this was a month or two ago, he was going to the UAE.
We could do a lot of good if we could get him into Virginia.
It'd be great.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that takes you deep into Michael Porter cluster territory. Once look, the reason the Northern Virginia tech boom kind of fizzled because it just couldn't keep up with Stanford and
Northern Virginia doesn't have the intellectual engine. You don't have an MIT, you don't have a Stanford. In Austin, they've got the University of Texas. You need that intellectual firepower.
I agree. That's why I've suggested the 800 university.
Yeah.
Just say it would the 800U if you really did it right.
Oh my God, you're talking about a meritocracy, though.
I'm talking about it would be nothing but Chinese and Hindus.
We're good with that.
And I'm good.
We
with
are
that.
good. I'm good.
I know exactly. And if you could deal with that, you say, listen, we don't care that you got an 800 in your English SAT. We don't care about that. We don't care about your gender studies and your genocide and anything like that. All we want is 800 math, and we'll get enough good professors and stuff, and adjuncts. I mean, especially in D.C., tons of adjuncts who know stuff. We'll have enough Nobel Prize winners to make it sort of sparkly. But the core of it is nothing but 800, 150 IQ grinds. Again, put that in Fairfax, Virginia. 10 years from now, Google.
We could do some good.
Yes, we could. You could, and you could also do things like, it's scandalous. Speaking of Northern Virginia, what they do for business up there. You might have seen this in the Wall Street Journal the other day. This is not in the book, obviously. The drones we have sent to Ukraine aren't working.
No, they're not.
The Ukrainians are using Chinese drones.
The tanks aren't either, but something as simple as a drone we can't get right. Yeah.
We need Palmer Luckey and Joe Lonsdale, and Joe Lonsdale was nice enough to blurb my book, coming in there and saying, look, we can do a lot better on defense, which is of all the things the government really should be focusing on, right? It's defense and making tech and not letting the Chinese.
Defense and infrastructure and a few other things, and that's about it. That's about what government's good at. Yeah.
The state should then be free to say, we will do as the voters here in X or Y, blue or red state choose. And then the American people can judge where they want to live.
So unfortunately I didn't have a chance to get to your book. I read your long summary, but then I tried to buy it on Kindle. It's not ready yet. I can't wait to get the whole thing. Here's the issue. Only 16% of Americans, and I'm quoting you, have confidence in the federal government.
According to Gallup.
Well, I think that's high, actually. But you've got all these really wonderful ideas about local federalist solutions. Each state can pick the kind of thing they want, and it's not a liberal conservative division. It's more kind of what culture you want to have in the state you're in, and that's innovation or that's lifestyle or whatever. But you got the federal government now that's just completely overweening and getting worse. And you can't build anything because of the federal regulations. The EPA is doing as much as it can to shut down innovation. So is the FDA. So is, on and on and on, the alphabet soup things. How do we free up? And I'm not sure I expect a practical answer, but it seems that's the issue.
It is exactly
everything's become a federal.
And I think that's where, again, to say I'm going to vote Republican, expect that to change, is not a good play. Again, you can say I am a Republican. However, I'm only going to vote for the candidates who pledge to curb the FDA, curb the EPA, and make it. It would take some brain power, but make the pledge on the EPA and the FDA as clean as the Grover Norquist tax pledge.
And I've interacted a lot with these freshmen, sophomore congressmen that come into town. They don't know any of this. They're not even remotely aware of the kind of problems they're going to face with the administrative state. I mean, they think the action's in Congress, and it's not really. I mean, it is sort of, and a lot emanates from there. But once it gets into the administrative state, it's gone, and they've taken over, and that's where so you're saying we could draft a pledge for each of these areas and say, okay, here's the 100 words we need to limit to 50. Here's 100 things, on these 5 issues, you pledge to vote this way on these issues.
And we record it, and it's public information. And then a lot of the pledge could be, we think if the FDA and the EPA are the way they are at the federal level, fine. But a state can opt out. Make that could be one sentence.
A state opts out of the EPA? Well, I happen to love that idea.
Experiment.
Well, but you mentioned California. One of the problems you have, if you're running a big company and you've got a national market, an international market, you're doing product development, and then California develops standards for an industry. Let's pick cars right now, or trucks. The way that the automobile makers think of it is that, well, we don't care that Tennessee doesn't have the same restraints as California because that's not as big a market. We've got to design everything for that biggest market, California, and that changes what every other state gets.
That's the way California changed the country,
and that's true in textbooks.
I think that was a mistake by the other states to let that happen. If I were Tennessee, I'd say, listen, we will not allow electric vehicles here.
Okay.
So you want to sell a car here? Can't be electric.
Well, we've got a de facto. Well, I guess Biden has now declared it at a federal level, but we're wandering into. I want to stick with the actionable. What are one of the ideas in this book that we haven't covered yet? Because I'm beginning to think this is going to be a fun read.
The AI is the world's biggest energy hog. And you're not going to power it with windmills and solar and stuff. You're going to power it with that uniquely good energy source, carbon energy. And if you think climate change is an issue, okay, fine. The proper understanding of a circular economy is that carbon, which is the human body, your body, my body, are 18% carbon. Everything in this room, including us, is a carbon sink. So if you think about where plastics come from, you think about where medicines come from, you think about where wood comes from, we could be capturing all the carbon if we want. We spent $20 trillion over the last 20 years on green energy and neglected carbon capture. We could easily make a grand compromise that says we're going to burn all the oil in this country. The total value of all the oil in this country is 217 trillion, not billion, trillion. So that's, that's $700,000 a person in America. And if the average American knew that, so we could have all this money, you could get a check from the government the way they get in Alaska for $3,000 a person in Alaska, $3,000. All you have to do is agree that we're going to burn all the oil and natural gas and clean coal, and we're going to capture all the carbon, and we're going to use it for landfill and carbon nanotubes and build a space elevator and maybe an island or two, and we're going to use it all up, and everybody's going to be rich, and you're going to have an AI and lots of money, and the air will be at 350 parts per million CO2. Everybody wins. That's in the book too.
Well, CO2 is not toxic. CO2 is a beneficial element.
I agree. I think
we're not winning that argument right now, but I think we will. I just joined the board of the CO2 Coalition, and we've got some Nobel laureates, and I'm the only non-PhD involved in it. Then the science is there. CO2 is at a 500 million year low.
It's also true when the CO2 level is 1,800 parts per million, the water level is 90 feet higher. And so it properly thought through, you want an efficient economy that says if carbon is an asset, use it.
Yeah.
Don't have it floating around in the atmosphere. Use it for something. Make buildings out of it. Use it for landfill. Use it for 3D printing. Use it again. Build a new island. That's actually a pet idea of mine. If the population of the world has quadrupled in the last 100 years, and we're still on the same 29% of the Earth's surface.
Well, are you familiar with graphene? You have to be. You seem to know about all this. George Gilder was here, and he talked about this massive problem we've got, where in the Pacific Ocean, there's a flotsam and jetsam, whatever the term is. There's something the size of Texas. It's plastic debris. It's disgusting. Most of it's come from Asia. Most of it's come from China. The rivers in China are the most polluted in the world. So, but one of the ideas is this plastic out there is great raw material for graphene, and graphene is a silicon substitute, and that actually could be a more better technology than what we have right now. And so with a little entrepreneurial effort and capital, ideas, capital, and labor, you apply it to that, all of a sudden you don't have a Texas-sized float in the Pacific. Instead, you've got graphene.
And maybe you have Hawaii 2.0.
There we go.
That was an investment. How much is Hawaii worth?
Okay, let's drill into that. What do you mean exactly?
Well, I mean, if the plastic is a solid, make an island out of it. Literally make an island.
Okay. Well, then that congressman who said that was worried about Puerto Rico tilting or something. Remember the island Waco?
Yeah, Johnson. Yeah.
Well, this one actually might tilt.
This is a challenge. All entrepreneurs and visionaries face the challenge of, you say, I got a great idea, let's go to Mars. Everybody laughs. And then you start doing it, and as Musk is doing, and look, we obviously the reason I wrote the book is to kind of get the Overton window moving in a little bit of a more positive direction. Yes, we could solve these problems. We don't need to just be despairing.
The Overton windows were the term that everybody should know. I just learned it a few years ago, which is there are these ideas which are totally outside the pale, ridiculous. We'll never do it. It'll never happen. And then there's conventional wisdom, which is where we live right now.
Right.
And almost all the good things, or almost all the change, comes from ideas that are outside that Overton window, and then they move in over time.
Right. Think about, and sometimes it happens you barely even notice. You and I are both old enough to remember the pre-internet era. And if you'd said there's going to be a little thing that gives you a thing on a phone, and 95% of Americans by 2024 are going to be using it, and it's like a magic communications device and reads the news and everything else, we would have said, that's Dick Tracy stuff. That's science fiction stuff. And it happened. And it's again, where it's allowed, again, I talk a lot in the book about you build a framework. You want something to happen, you build a framework around the railroads, you get a lot of railroads. You build a framework around highways, you get a lot of highways. You pass the Communications Decency Act of 1996, and you get it through the Senate 92-5.
I have an idea for your next job. If Trump gets elected, and I'm a Trump guy, but if he misses an awful lot. He doesn't cover any of this at all.
I know.
I think we should make you the consigliere.
Well, look,
I think we need these ideas. We need somebody who's pushing this sort of thing in government.
It's that the challenge. I've worked in the White House for 6 years total, and I know what it's like to say you have a big idea on something and then realize
you get killed.
There's some congressman on the phone, and then something erupts, and then there's a scandal or something, and it's just Drew Lewis, who was the transportation secretary under Reagan, once told me the only way you can get anything done in this world is you have to pick one or two issues and just delegate everything else. If you're the secretary of transportation, there's 100 things to worry about. And he just said, I'm giving all 98 of them to Darrell Trenton, who was the deputy back then.
Yeah.
And I'll do 2, in his case, PATCO and the infrastructure bill. And that was it. And he had just a very clean, incisive, business-like, as he was, approach to life. And he got things done. It is incredibly hard to do this stuff. But you certainly have no chance of succeeding if you haven't thought of it in the first place.
Do you get into artificial intelligence in the book?
I do.
Let's talk about that. Where do you see this going?
I think it's going to be as big as they say it's going to be.
Yeah.
And again, we conservatives, Republicans can't pretend that they're going to be viable in the future if all the AIs are built in San Francisco.
Right.
So we need our own.
I'm using AI to try to write things now.
Sorry?
I'm using a ChatGPT plus a lot of other ancillary
Which
apps.
is to say, some blue-haired transsexual in San Francisco knows everything about you.
I'm comfortable with that, but I would like to have them write in a way that I think, not the way they think. And
Well,
you can't
maybe
get it
they
to
will,
do
maybe they
that.
won't.
You can't get it to do that.
It should tell you something.
I don't mind
that-
what they think.
that- San Francisco, which every conservative loves to hate,
Yeah.
is the hub of this. So the people who, the science fiction writer Larry Niven I asked him once, what did he learn in 30 years of writing science fiction? And he said, what I learned, I was expecting to say something about space or something. He said, people just as intelligent as you think just the opposite. And that that helped me write this book and thinking, yes, there really are people who would sit here and listen to us and say, I have just as high an IQ, but I disagree.
How could they?
Let them tell you. And so actually the chapter in the book called Schismogenesis, which is to say, in anthropology, when two tribes start fighting, they both sort of get stronger. They toughen up. They get serious about themselves. And so you can see it now in America. There's sort of a red patriotism and a blue patriotism, and they're both sort of conscious of we can't be fools and look bad and stupid to the other guys. And so it's forcing them to kind of clean up their act and get better at things. And that's the rivalry. It's the team rivalry thing. And I think
things get better because of that back and forth.
And so that, from an investment point of view, whether you're investing in AI in San Francisco or in oil in Louisiana, you can both do well if you think it through. And this is again back to Youngkin and deal makers. If you say, listen, AI needs energy, and energy needs to be burned and consumed. So let's work together. Let's have some compromise on carbon capture, something rather, and make new islands with it, or make new high rises, or something. Do all that, and that becomes the sort of deal making that overcomes the sort of horrible polarization we're seeing, which could end up in something we both don't want, which is some kind of civil war.
Yeah, we don't.
Much better make deals.
I love this. When's your book come out?
May 28th.
May 28th. Okay, so I'm going to get it. And the other thing is, you got to come back on. You're like a one man innovation machine in yourself.
I'd love to. Thank you.
And so I'll get you on a couple other people that you'd be. Do you know John Malden? John Malden, he's a futurist as well. You're not quite.
Okay.
Anyway, there's an I can see where we could actually offer up a lot of positive direction for a lot of people that are not getting it much now.
Well, I think it's also the beginning of a pretty good political platform.
It is.
And again, starting with...
We need to rethink the divides.
What I think would be a pretty good political pitch would you like $3,000 per person? Like they do in Alaska. I'm making the same offer that they make in Alaska.
I know both Joe Biden and Donald Trump would like that pitch.
Look, you have to get you want the country on board. You want people not to murder you, and they want you to defend them against the Chinese. You have to make some concessions, some deal making.
Yeah. Well, I'm with you on that, and I think let's wind this one down right now.
Okay.
But let's do it next time.
Be great.
Fairly soon, and get into some of these ideas. I want to dig into this more, and we'll come back with some specific stuff. In the meantime, everybody's got to buy this book on May 28th. It's on Amazon. You can pre-order it. If you want to think about things very differently, I think this is one of the great places to start. So, Jim Pinkerton, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for joining. And as you know, you can find us on all the major podcast platforms, on Substack now. We're also on CPAC now, not Substack now, Substack and CPAC now on Monday nights, and now more often on another two or three nights a week. So anyway, thanks for joining. Please subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. Tell your friends too. And as always, you can send us some email or messages about things you'd like us to cover, and we'll get at it. So thanks for joining.